love that title sequence. It just really gets me ramped up for the movie. Hello, my name's Peter from DALWHINNY, and over here is my wife.
Hi, I'm Kala. I'm your disembodied voice for the day as I'm running the camera, the computer, and wrangling pups. Plus helping out.
Yes. DALWHINNY is Scotch Gaelic for the meeting place. It means everything that we love and do is all together here on this one channel. So this channel isn't just about one thing like the movies that we're going to be talking about in this video. It's all kinds of things. Things we love to do like cooking, crafting, outdoors, gardening, our dogs.
Food tasting, memes.
What I'm talking about today is John Carpenter's The Thing. And I fell in love with this movie when I was 6 years old at the drive-in during its initial release in 1982. And I have loved it ever since. I've seen it, I don't know how many times, honestly. I've seen the prequel. I've seen the 51 movie. I've read the novella. And lately...
He's forced me to watch it over and over.
Yes.
Honestly, not forced. I'm a huge fan of horror. I'm pretty sure I saw this, and I didn't see it. I was passed out asleep in the back of the car. My parents were watching it at the drive-in. Yeah. I just remember waking up and seeing something with dogs.
Experience was a bit different than mine. You actually had to play around. We were sitting there like, what's the matter?
Well, as an only child, he was one of 3 boys.
But what we really want to do is go into depth and look at the film itself as it came out in the theaters in 1982. What did the movie-going audience have with them? Pretty much nothing else. And we want to see what contextual clues in that movie can give you an idea of what is going on, who was assimilated when, who the shadow is on the wall, that kind of stuff. And
what you gleaned from the movie, what the filmmaker, and then we'll also include what the filmmakers say, what people's hypotheses and theories are. Mm-hmm. We're going to go through all of it, and we're going to hopefully add some clarity.
Yes, I hope so.
But at the same time, have a lot of fun. As we're going to get into, this movie has endured, and it is still finding new fans today. And that's one of the other reasons we are doing this. It has never stopped. It's that snowball coming down the hill. It has never stopped getting huge.
Well, basically because the older fans like myself keep telling the newer horror fans, you got to watch this. This is something that will blow your socks off, and it literally does. When I decided to do this video, I had a certain degree of connection to some of the people who actually made the movie. And how that came to be is in 2022, there was a plan for the 40th anniversary to have a kind of festival up in British Columbia where they filmed it there.
What, 2015, 2016, we were already part of their planning. We had gotten hooked in with the planning.
Yeah, it was
Todd and Peter and...
Yeah, Todd Cameron, who founded Outpost 31, and then Peter Abbott from the UK, who is a super fan, who's been to the location himself, as well as Todd has.
And Peter Abbott has been to a lot. He's a huge movie fan, period. Yes. Like, he's gone to the filming locations of a lot of movies, even Jaws and stuff.
Right, he's come to the United States to meet the actors and the crew and all that. The plan for this was that the week ahead of time of this festival, there was going to be a small group of us, and we were going to build the McCready's shack, a replica, full size. And what was going to happen is we were going to have like a recording. We're going to do like a behind the scenes thing for this festival, and there was only going to be a small core group of us in that project. But unfortunately, it didn't happen because COVID. Just what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had everything was planned because there was about 10 people.
Yeah.
You were one of them. I don't think I was included in the 10 because I will bring you guys supplies, but do not have me hammer nails to save my life. As good as I am as crafts, me and nails and hammers just don't get along.
No.
But I was going to help with like food and I was going to be the runner for supplies. Can you hold this board in place while fine. There was going to be limited tickets, 100 people, and COVID just submarined it all, and it was like, okay, so now this just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and what was really going to be neat, because the McCready shack was going to be a bonfire at the end of all of it, culminating the whole thing, and that would have been
permission for that, and
that would have been spectacular. It really would have been.
And because you're an RN, you don't have reciprocity for Canada, but at least you can say, well, we have medical staff on site.
Yeah, I would have been the site medic, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I got in contact with. I'm friends with Facebook with Thomas G. Waits and Stuart Cohen. the co-producer, and Norbert Weisser, the guy who was the Norwegian with the rifle. Now, because of these connections, I asked them to help with this project here, and they all have graciously agreed. And I want to give a special thanks to Tom Waits, because he got me in touch with Joel Polis, and we have been able to get in touch with him and get a good, solid interview, and he has provided some interesting photographs from on set back in the day. So that's going to be really cool.
And we're not going to show all of them, and we're not, even the ones we show, we make crop, because Mr. Polis wants to write a book.
Yes.
And he wants to include these photos, and I don't want to give anything away.
No. A little teaser, that's about it.
Yeah.
Don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, but Mr. Weisser has given us a ton of photos. He's like, yeah, go ahead. So
yeah, there's going to be some. That. Yeah, Mr. Weisser has provided some really interesting photos. We can't wait to show you those.
He also challenged you with this when you first.
Yes. Yeah, when I first contacted him, he's like, and I have the email still, and he says, "What are you going to do to separate yourself from the plethora of the other videos out there?" And that's where I came up with the idea for the context of the movie, because nobody really does that, because everybody talks about the other things, the scripts, and then all the things that have come afterwards, the comic books, the games, the board games. I mean, there's a lot, but nobody has really talked about what just does the movie show you back in the 1802. In preparation for this, I went like a deep dive, full immersion. I read a lot of material. I won't list it all because there's a lot, but I went through the novelization, the novella, comic books. I reread the script. We watched the movie multiple times with the different commentaries, and really absorbed a lot of information. And
we even watched the people's videos on YouTube, whether they had good information or not, even just people's reaction videos.
Yes.
Anything and everything about the thing you have been binging on since February, since you decided. So, and it's still, even as we are filming, you are still continuing to do research.
Yeah, this started in February, and this is going to be released in June. So there's a lot of work involved. And
as you would know, because you're watching it right now on June 25th. So.
One of the issues I have with a lot of these videos I've seen, especially the analysis videos and the trivia videos. The reaction videos, they're really cool. They're very entertaining if you haven't seen any of them. Some of the people who have never seen this movie before just get completely blown away by the effects, the gore, and they're really caught off guard, and people are crying, people are screaming.
She kicked off her shoes.
Kicks off her shoes so she can hide on the couch. But one of the biggest pet peeves I have is the misinformation. Now, I know it's not intentional, but a lot of the things they put out there are unfortunately just plain wrong. And I do want to set the record straight on some of that stuff, but also some of the things that really what make this movie so good and so perfect, in my opinion, is never really been brought to light. It's mentioned off to the side, or it's somehow misinformed or reported. I'm not even sure how to describe it, but they say it, they mention it, but they don't give it enough detail or illumination to really get you to understand what was really happening, especially when the movie was in development. So that's what this video here, this chapter 1, volume 1, whatever you want to call it, that's what this video is going to be about, is to illuminate some of the things that behind the scenes, that what really made this movie so awesome.
Well, because we're going to take you on a timeline of the original book from the 30s.
Right.
Through today.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we have ahead. So up next is going to be the timeline of the genesis and how the thing was made.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And don't forget to comment and keep that discussion going that's been going on for over 40 years.
So what do you think I did? I pulled the fire alarm, marked my fingerprints off, and got the hell out of there.
Oh. We're back. Hello. Hi. All right, so now we're going to start with the timeline of the genesis of how the thing came to be.
Every time you say that, I'm instantly like, Genesis? This is how the 1982 thing
came to be, yes.
Come to be, because we're not going to go past that yet.
No, not yet. We'll discuss after how the movie came out and all that, the aftermath, later on in video number 3. Right now, we're just going to talk about the lead up to how the thing 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing was produced.
Right.
So starting off with the...
So we have in 1938, the novella Who Goes There is published.
Right. August 1938 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. It was written...
magazine, yes?
Yes, it's a science fiction magazine. There was a lot of them at the time. A lot of them were like quicker stories. Like I said, this is a novella, which is shorter than a novel. I don't remember the actual word count, but
we'll have it on the bottom of your screen right now.
So he published it in 1938. He was actually already the editor of...
Who is he?
John W. Campbell, Jr., under the pseudonym of Don A. Stewart, which is actually an amalgamation of his wife's name, Danya Stewart. This is the beginning of the shape-shifting mimic, where the creature, although it does sort of have like an original form, because the creature, as described in there when they find it in the ice, is, has like this weird, smooth, rubbery skin, 3 very red eyes that said are full of hate or malice, worm-like hair, and it was all blue. It had 4 arms, and instead of fingers, it actually had like little tentacles.
And whenever it would assume the form of a human, or you says even dogs and cattle.
Right.
But whenever it was like in between, like trying to attack or doing, it would kind of revert to original form.
Basically, yes. So this book, it was very popular. It's very different than the movie in that it has a much larger cast. There's 37 of them in this, 15 of which actually become assimilated. So if you haven't read it, sorry for the spoilers. But also it assimilates as many as 70 dogs and a number of cattle that they had there for milk. But like she was saying, that anytime the creature assimilated something and then went on to get to somebody else, it had reverted to that blue form. So it was almost as if that was
its original form,
what it was born as, or something like that. In the novel itself, or the novella itself, they speculate if it was assuming the shape of the creatures that had operated and built the ship that it came on, or was it something that was adapted to the cold?
In Antarctica.
It landed in Antarctica, but it's speculation, and there really is no way to know if it is in fact like the true form of the creature in this story. The other aspect of the creature had a telepathy ability, not necessarily like talk to you like mind to mind, but it was more of like influencing your dreams, and would get in your head and give you nightmares, and almost
so it wasn't
like
a Professor X kind of
no, it was
thing.
More
it was more like
it would influence your dream, and one of the things was it gave a nightmare to somebody and told them that this person was going to be the enemy, and it was someone who was their friend, and that's what it turns out, is that later on that person had been assimilated, and so the nightmare kind of came true, and that's what it was basically doing, is that this is what I'm going to do to you and your group here, and it tried to follow through. Now, as far as how the creature looks, there's a lot of stuff online on what it looks like, and you see all kinds of pictures. I know there's some people who aren't really fans of AI generated images, but I went to ChatGPT and tried to put in the information about the description.
It still gave you 4 eyes.
4 eyes or just 2. It didn't give you the 3 eyes, and the images are interesting, but it really didn't hit on what I was expecting the creature to look like. Like I said, it didn't give the smooth skin or anything like that. So it's hit or miss, honestly. But
there is a drawing out there someone did. Well, we'll put it up on the screen. Somebody did years ago. I want to say book accurate.
Yeah.
And it was hand-drawn, not AI drawn.
The language is a little bit different to modern ears. And a lot of it, they're talking about the creature being like pure evil and sinister and wanting to destroy the earth, which a lot of the science fiction stories at that time, when a malevolent creature comes to earth, that's mainly the goal. And you actually kind of see that in the next step of evolution for this story in the 1951 film Thing from Another World, released on April 27th, 1951. Everybody who's familiar with all of this knows it was a Howard Hawks production.
It's a classic in and of itself.
It is.
And Howard Hawks himself has done a lot of classic.
Mm-hmm. Officially directed by Christian Nyby. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Please forgive me. It's more of a looser adaptation of the novella. The creature, like I said just a moment ago, it comes to Earth with the idea to conquer. But it's plant man, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
a being, a humanoid being, and a lot of people do compare it to Frankenstein's monster. And yes, there's a lot of similar because it's like a slow lumbering kind of thing.
It's a guy in a suit.
Yeah. And
you'll hear that gets mentioned about.
But it's made of vegetable matter that, conventional firearms, just drill holes in it and doesn't do anything, just pisses it off. So the idea is it's a vegetable. What do you do with vegetables? You cook them.
Why don't you boil it? Like Mickey says.
Boil it, stew it, bake it, fry it.
One of the unique features of it is that it can use human blood to replicate.
Right. It also uses human blood, or blood, actually mammal blood, because some of the dogs were actually drained of blood as well, is that it uses it for sustenance. At one point in the movie, the thing's arm is ripped off by a pack of dogs. It manages to regrow it, assuming draining the blood from one of the dogs. But it also uses blood to replicate itself. It's able to pull seed pods out of itself, plant them in the dirt, in the greenhouse. It was the only place it could, and use a couple of victims as donors. It's unique as far as sci-fi goes, as far as a creature like that. But also at the time,
it's even radioactive. In the movie, you see that it's the way they're
that's right. I forgot about that part. Yeah,
because it's the 50s, so every creature has a bit of radioactivity going on.
The atomic bomb was dropped not too long before this, so it's on everybody's mind. Radioactivity, atomic weapons.
We say loose adaptation because the differences are this is taking place in the Arctic. In
the North Pole, yes.
The North Pole. Is it even in Alaska, or are they up past Alaska? They're past Alaska.
It's North Pole. It's up. I'm not even sure if it's still Greenland or Canada up to that point. But
no, because
the first scene takes place in Alaska, where they kind of introduce a number of the characters, and this is
and that's the Army base.
They're going on. There's something going on, and you got to fly there, and that's where the rest of the story takes place.
Some of the other things they include, aside from it having radioactive, they use a Geiger counter to track it.
Mm-hmm.
Is also that it's like there's a mention by because they don't even mention extraterrestrial at first. It's like, it could be the Russians. They're all over up there.
Right.
That whole Red Scare.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where the inspiration comes from the original novellas. It does have a lot more characters.
Mm-hmm.
It does hit. I wouldn't say there's 37 of them, but
no, there's actually a lot more than that. A lot of them are just people in the background.
To have Nikki not be in a tiny tight dress and her bullet bra and her heels dropping to the floor, putting her hand to her forehead, screaming as it's coming at her. It was so refreshing to actually have it wasn't the damsel in distress again.
She wasn't the typical woman at the time what they portrayed in movies. Like I said, it wasn't. Women didn't actually do this where they're running and then suddenly they just trip over the air for no reason and they just start screaming. Yeah, and it's just she's just as much as part of the crew and really is kind of defies those common tropes at the time where she's
they try to burn it, but that's unique about the film. It's the first live burn.
Yeah, this is the first movie that had a full body burn on a stunt person in the movies. And you watch the scene and it's incredible, but then also at the same time, if you watch the scene again closely, it's like it was really dangerous. And at one point the creature's is burning and he's starting to move through the room, and then some other guy just splashes more fuel onto him and it just goes everywhere. How they ultimately dispatch the creature is through electricity. They kind of tease it to come down a hallway, catch it between a couple leads, and they zap it, which is the same way how it is killed in the original novella. They also kind of touch jokingly about the telepathy aspect of the creature, because one guy asked,
"It can read minds."
Well, he's going to be really mad when he gets to me.
Yeah,
it's like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
But it really is a good movie, standalone on its own. Don't worry about that. It's an unusual adaptation of a previous story.
So in 1969, John Carpenter actually starts at USC Cinema, and he meets Stuart Cohen.
Yes, future co-producer of The Thing, Stuart Cohen.
Yes, actually, Stuart is more just a co-producer, but we're going to get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
So that's the next in our timeline. So we jump from 51 to 69.
I hope you're liking what you've seen so far. And like I said, we love to continue the discussion. Comment below on what you've heard so far, if there's any other information you want to add. And now we're going to move on to
1972, the movie Horror Express.
This is going to raise a few eyebrows.
It's like, Horror Express, how does that connect? So Horror Express has Peter Cushing.
Mm-hmm.
He was Grand Moff Tarkin.
Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars.
He's him and Christopher Lee, which was Sauron.
I can never remember which one's Sauron and which one's Saruman.
Forgive me. I watched
in Lord of the Rings, and
I'm so sorry.
Forgive us.
Who else is it? Telly Savalas?
Telly Savalas. He doesn't come in until later in the movie, but he's
a unique character in there.
deliciously over the top as some Russian Cossack.
When you say loose adaptation, it is loose in the loosest way.
Very loose adaptation. It was released in June 20th, 1972. Actually, a British-Spanish cooperation film. Actually, the original novella is not even mentioned as a credit or inspiration for this, but you can really see the similarities. It takes place.
Enunciate.
It takes place in 1906 in a Trans-Siberian train.
And if you didn't know it was on a train, they will show you over and over again.
They find a human frozen in the ice.
Humanoid.
Yes.
To use a Star Trek term.
And it is recovered and put in a crate, put on the train. It is a creature. It attacks people. And what it does, if it touches you, it is able to absorb your memories. That was one of the first victims before they even get on the train. It kills a thief and is able to use a nail to pick the lock. And then it gets out. And one of the other aspects of the creature, it doesn't, like in the novella, it doesn't absorb you and copy you. It just kind of, the consciousness of the creature jumps into your body and uses you as a doppelganger. It has your memories and your knowledge, but also maintains itself inside you. And the previous shell is just kind of discarded.
Yeah, and it has powers with these red eyes. Yeah, because one of the ways they find out these people are not human is that it's that idea that your eyes not are just the windows to the soul, but your eye would capture the last thing you saw.
Yeah, something similar to a blood test. They take an eye from a previous victim and they dissect it to get the fluid inside the eye, the vitriol fluid, and they look at it under a microscope, and that's where they see these images of previous victims, dinosaurs, and then at one point you see the Earth from space. So that's giving them an indication that this is an extraterrestrial. And then later as they confront it, it was like a being of light that got left behind.
Every time it attacks someone to hide some of the effects, it literally strikes in the dark.
And he literally walks into like the telegraph office and goes, and then attack. The chameleon strikes in the dark. You know, it's like and then he kind of proceeds to chuck the guy out the window. No, the creature sees that there are a number of people on the train that one has developed a new form of steel. Another
How
one,
fortuitous.
Yes. Another person has formed or discovered a way of rocket propulsion, because it's 1906, so they didn't have jets or anything yet. The creature was going to these people, assuming them and taking their knowledge so it could basically build its own craft to get off the planet. So you can see there's a lot of similarities between this movie and the novella.
And yet there isn't.
So that's Horror Express. Like it says, take it as it is. It's a fun flick. And yeah, I think it is entertaining and worth a watch. So yeah.
All right. So from 1972, this is where people don't know the history of John Carpenter's The Thing.
This section here is one of the things I really wanted to touch on as far as to enlighten everybody about, especially the background on how this movie came to be.
Because so many people feel John Carpenter went to Universal to get the movie in like 81, 82. No. In 1977, Stuart Cohen, remember we said there was a gentleman who went to school with John. Stuart Cohen actually goes to, he's actually not even Universal yet.
Well, yeah, he goes to the Turman and Foster production company because he was a TV producer and he didn't have a lot of Hollywood clout at that time. And so he went to them to pitch the idea, and then because they were a larger production company, altogether they went to Universal and sold them on the idea. And I says, I've been in contact with Stuart Cohen, and he's sent a bunch of emails and answered a lot of questions, so I'm very grateful to him for that.
Stuart also has a blog. We're going to have a link in the description where he details a lot of this.
A lot of this information about this particular section comes from that blog, and some of the personal communication I've had with him. So it starts off in 1977. He sells the idea to Universal Pictures. And he's talking about, yes, it is a monster movie, but the idea of the monster within the man. And a lot of people are able to see the paranoia and isolation aspects of John Carpenter's The Thing. And that's where he really wanted to play it up, where you see the breakdown of these characters and how they turn on each other.
Because this was how Stuart sold it. It is not a remake. They went back to the original source material. It's a reimagining.
Right. He loved the 51 movie, and he didn't want to remake that because he felt the movie was good enough as it was. But he wanted to go back to the original source material and talk about, again, the paranoia, the isolation, and the shape-shifting mimic that's in the book. He really wanted to focus on that. So that's what his original goal was, to recreate who goes there. And this is where a lot of things get misinterpreted or misinformed, because some people say, oh, there was an attempt to make it in the 70s and it fell flat, or, Tobe Hooper was attached to direct, and that.
Which, there's... Whoa. So you're getting ahead of yourself.
Well, no, I say it's all part of the same development program or cycle, however you want to call it.
This is all the same story arc. These aren't separate instances.
Yeah, Stuart Cohen started this, and he was with it every single step of the way. He gets the idea, he gets greenlit for development. So, all right, so we need a director, we need a script writer. As far as directors go, they did go through a number of them, but Tobe Hooper was...
Texas Chainsaw Massacre
He made Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, and it was a very big hit. Him and his friend, I want to say Kim, but I can't remember the guy's last name, unfortunately.
We'll put it on screen right now.
Yeah, they wrote that movie, and they wrote their ideas for The Thing. Now, this is where they deviate from this source material, and it was more of like a Captain Ahab kind of thing, where he was this guy bent on revenge to seek out the creature and destroy it. Didn't have anything that they wanted, so I was like, no. He wasn't officially set to direct, and it wasn't something where he was eventually kicked out or anything. No, they were kicking around some ideas, they said no thank you, and they moved on. Cohen had always wanted John Carpenter to direct, but at that time he didn't have the clout or the notoriety. Now,
okay, so this is all through 77, 78. Now you get into 79 when Halloween comes out and Alien.
Yes, Halloween comes out 78, major blockbuster for Carpenter. 79 comes out, Alien. Now Carpenter has the directorial chops now to say I can make a hit movie. Alien comes up and shows them. People want to see sci-fi alien movies. Yeah. Horror movies.
Sci-fi horror can be a hit. It can make money. Yeah. Not just a niche market.
Right, so it kind of reinvigorates the whole idea that they want to make this movie. Stuart Cohen comes up with the idea and approaches Bill Lancaster.
Where does William Nolan's screenplay come in? Where was that one?
That was when they were looking for different writers. Bill Lancaster is the writer they settled on. But William F. Nolan wrote A Treatment, which is in this book here.
Hold it up high, face height.
I couldn't find it anywhere online as far as something to read. This is the only place I know of that it exists here.
Okay.
And they just didn't like it because it's more of an invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing, where the aliens are beings of light, and they do take on the person. Like they don't copy it. They basically kind of hollow out the skin and live inside it.
Ugh.
But when they do is when they go to the next person, that skin is kind of just left there.
Oh.
And they have to hide it, and they make up these stories on why this person's missing and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's really complicated.
Yeah, it didn't sit quite right with me. It's like, no, and I could see why they passed on it. It's like, it just wouldn't work.
So now that Mr. Carpenter actually has this nice big hit of Halloween under his belt, so now Stuart's, hey, how about John?
Right.
And Bill Lancaster is another Nepo baby.
I'm blonde, I'm rich, I'm a Nepo baby.
Because Burt Lancaster is his father, so he's...
Guy named Burt.
Burt. A guy named Burt.
He wrote The Bad News Bears, so they asked him to approach it, and he was very keen on going to this source material and recreating the story from there.
Right.
And then he wrote up a script. John looked at it, he loved it. He especially was enthralled by the blood test scene. That's what really sold him on wanting to come on board and direct this movie.
But it also links to the original novella. They do, although it's very complicated, they have a blood test scene in the original novella is how they were...
Right, but they have this very complicated way of testing the blood. It didn't work anyway. So then like in the 82 movie, they resort to sticking a hot metal wire in the blood and see what happens. One of the other things, again, why Stuart Cohen is such a valuable part of this, not only did he initiate this whole thing, so without him it would not have happened, but he also suggested not only Bill Lancaster, but also Ennio Morricone to do the score. John Carpenter had a lot on his plate, and he kind of wanted to do the music. As someone who's done the music on all of his movies up to that point.
And he'll do after, too.
Afterwards, yes. He had something in mind already, but too much is going on. And so Stuart Cohen recommended Ennio Morricone. They met with him. They showed him a little bit of what they had.
Like, they went to Rome.
And, yeah, they eventually went to Italy, and John Carpenter met with him. He fiddled on the keyboard, kind of gave Ennio what he was thinking of how to set the tone.
Because they're trying to talk to him through a translator. They don't know Italian. He doesn't know much English.
Right. And
so John just says, screw this.
Through the language of music.
That's
how it worked.
Stuart gets into this in detail on his blog.
Yeah, he explains a lot better, how this, it's not only this evolution of how the music came to be, but all aspects of how not only leading up to getting the movie made, but the casting, the music, the special effects after the movie was made, and how they were trying to publicize it, how they were trying to make the ending the way they wanted it to be, all of that.
We're going to explain a lot of this.
We'll go in a little bit of detail, but his blog goes into a lot of great detail about how this movie came to be.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and don't forget to comment and keep that discussion going that's been going on for over 40 years.
Stuart Cohen, he gets the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. He gets his friend from school, John Carpenter, on board, and inevitably, Jesus takes the wheel, and John, it becomes John's movie. He has his people that he can trust.
We did interviews with Tom Waits and Joel Polis, and we asked about certain aspects of making the movie. And yeah, he is a good director, and you work hard, but you also get a chance to play hard too.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. Is like he says, he's not someone who's cracking the whip and telling you it's like you have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And Joel basically reported the same things after the infamous bus ride from hell. John greets them, and then he says, "Yeah, we were given the whole day to kind of just chill and relax, and didn't start till the next day." He wasn't someone who says, "All right, let's get started right now." It's like, "But we're tired." No. None of that.
Kurt Russell wouldn't have worked with him how many times?
I said Norbert Weisser, who was the Norwegian pilot with the rifle, he showed us a picture of them tobogganing.
Oh, yeah, here. You'll see it right here.
And you'll see it here on the screen. And you can see there's Norbert and Joel Polis and a few others, unfortunately, we couldn't identify, having fun out there in the snow up in British Columbia. So you can see that it wasn't some kind of set that was just miserable all the time. You can see that they had fun, and it really is incredible to see these images provided by some of the people who were there.
It's now John Carpenter's movie, but one of the things Stuart does to save them money, because it's one of his jobs, is every time they need more money, it's Stuart that has to go ask.
Yeah, pretty please.
Yeah. He winds up needing to get more for Rob Bottin in his effects department. Mm-hmm. But it's Stuart's idea to save them a ton of money by saying, well, we won't build another set. Let's just use the burnt back of this one as the Norwegian camp and just work it different.
He was trying to be frugal about it. So there's no point in building the whole set just to burn it when you could just, go around to one side of the building and just, there's not much exterior set shots when they're at the Norwegian base. You see them come out.
You don't really see a whole lot of detail of either.
You see them come out and they find what is commonly known as split face in the pyre.
One side of the helicopter was painted for the Norwegian. The other side was painted for the American. That helicopter McCready uses is the same one the Norwegians are coming in on. And I caught it.
Yeah, you caught it when we were watching the movie. All right, so at this point, again, we would like to encourage you to like, subscribe, and comment. Like I said, keep the discussion going.
John Carpenter takes the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And we were saying John has his core group of people. He has worked with Rob Bottin before.
Yes.
Mr. Bottin has done other movies before. Star Wars.
Yes, he was in the original Star Wars.
He works with John Carpenter in The Fog, and he plays...
Captain Blake.
Yes.
at the end.
Again, because he's tall.
Like you talked about, his core group, Donald Pleasance, Tom Atkins,
they were originally
Lee Van Cleef. All of these guys were considered for roles. Stuart had a hand in this and says, look, I know these guys are in your comfort zone and you've worked with them before, but I think you really need to kind of go beyond this group of people and see what you can find. And that's where you get this talented cast.
And then he goes, man, I worked with Kurt Russell before, but I'm going to put him in. He remembers Joel Polis from a student film Joel was in.
Yes.
Here's that.
And it turns out that John, who had gone to USC Film School, he actually saw me in the only student film I ever did. And
wow.
He remembered me from a particular moment from that film.
Oh, that's pretty well. Then that means you made an impression then.
I actually slipped on my ass. But I was running up these stairs. Something was happening in the house, and I slipped and fell down. And I got up and I continued running into the house because something was happening. And they caught it live on camera, and it was alive. It was real. So you remember that.
And then here's Tom Waits gets hired.
Yeah.
They saw him in a play.
They didn't hire me on the spot. They saw me in American Buffalo with Al Pacino.
Okay.
Which is a 3-character play. It was me, Al, and a great actor named Clifton James. And they called my agent and requested me to come in and audition. And I auditioned, and they liked me, and they hired me. And I've been doing American Buffalo for about a year, so it's very tough to do a play 8 shows a week for a year.
We're not sure how Keith David gets hired, but here's a little something interesting that Tom gave us about that.
Keith and I had gone to Juilliard together, and we were mates.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we used to hang out in the stairwell and smoke pot together. And
So he was like Childs and Palmer.
and he showed up on the first day and was like, I looked at him and I go, what the fuck are you doing here? And he's like, what are you doing here?
All right, now we're going to get into the next section where I believe needs more illumination for everybody. It becomes John Carpenter's The Thing. This is where it really becomes his movie instead of directing someone else who wrote it, their story. What happens is they're doing the studio shooting late summer into autumn in Los Angeles, and it was very hot, and they were on refrigerated sets, so a lot of people got sick. But what they had to do was in October, they actually had to hurry up and finish all of the in-studio shooting because there was the threat of a potential labor strike. So they had to finish up early. So now they had all this time because they finish up in October and they're not going to start shooting the exterior shots in Stuart, British Columbia until December. So depending on which store you go to, it could be anywhere between 5 to 8 weeks of this gap in time in the schedule, which gave Mr. Carpenter a very unique opportunity to examine the movie he has done so far. And he didn't like it. Stuart goes into more detail of this on his blog, but
just a bunch of guys standing around having an argument.
Pretty much. None of the effect shots were in there, with maybe the exception of the kennel scene, because I think that was the first one they recorded. A lot of it was where they're just standing around arguing or talking. And he said the pacing was bad. He didn't like this dialogue-heavy stuff. There's nothing going on. He went about making some cuts, and he did more than just make some cuts. He started off with those scenes where he's talking about people standing around talking, and he trimmed them down to make it better pacing. But what he also did is, a lot of people are aware of, there's a photo going around of Fuchs, pinned to the door with the shovel going through his stomach. That's part of a larger scene where Childs and Palmer go visit their little greenhouse full of
their pot farm,
pot plants.
Yeah,
and there's dialogue in the script where it says, they're even concerned that this thing can imitate living things. These are living things. What the hell? But anyway, all of that was cut, so they had to come up with a new death scene for Fuchs, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The other things that were cut was Bennings' death. Now, the original death for Bennings was out in the ice fields. What happened was the surviving dogs were infected because they had bitten the thing and swallowed the tissue and then became things themselves. And they chased after him out into the ice. Bennings is attacked, pulled under the ice, and then he's
pulled under, popped up, pulled under, popped up.
Right, yeah. And then in various stages of, as you see in other things, various stages of assimilation. Mm-hmm. And
it sounds great.
It would have been a great scene, but it was just
too much
because they would have to build a set on stilts and all this stuff. It was just too expensive.
Water tank, and that gets very dangerous.
So they cut all of that out, and they went to a very simplified death. There's a deleted scene that's you'll find on the internet where he goes into the dog kennels and gets stabbed in the back or the neck with an ice pick by some unknown guy, and it's never revealed.
So while John has this bit of time,
right,
and he's watching that, he basically his stomach sinks. I assume,
yeah,
because he says to everybody, he goes, "Crap! I just made a slasher film."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just it's and Stuart mentions in his blog is that Bill wrote that way to play into Carpenter's wheelhouse, and he says no, this is from a different movie. This doesn't belong here. So then you get the scene which is it made it into movie, how Bennings is assimilated, and that serves multiple purposes. Before we get to that as well, we're also going to take one more cut that I want to talk. There's a lot of other ones. We go to Cohen's blog, you'll find them out there. The other one is actually not mentioned in his blog, is the part where the dog running from the Norwegian is actually shot. And
that's still left in the movie. You see a wound on the dog's leg.
When the dog turns around before Clark walks up to it, you see on its left hip, there's a bullet wound.
And while if you watch while Clark is petting and telling him easy, easy, you'll see there's a fake wound.
And then when Bennings is getting stitched up, if you get it, you glimpse it quickly, you see in the background where you see Clark standing over a table doing something. That's him bandaging up or even stitching up the dog's wound. Now getting to Bennings' death. The room that they're in was actually a new mock-up because it wasn't done when they did the interior shots and the studio shots in Los Angeles. They mocked that up.
Didn't they have to do that in a room at Stuart?
Yes.
Because they were not planning on doing any interiors.
No, it was all for all exteriors. So they mocked that up and
the supply room or whatever.
Yeah, the supply room. Bottin was very busy, so they sent him up a ton of KY jelly, orange dye, some tentacles. And
what do you have? I got hands.
And if you look closely, the hands that Bennings thing has when he's outside before they burn him, those are the same creepy hands that Palmer thing wears later on. You see him fly up into the ceiling and you see the hands flopping. It's the same gloves.
Yeah, you see, I got this done here.
Right. So they set that stuff up so they can do that scene real quick. It was done in one shot. Peter Maloney was not comfortable.
Wasn't this the thing where they said you can reshoot the scenes, you got to do whatever you want, just do it in 3 hours?
No, that's for Fuchs' death.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
I'm sorry, I'm not good.
That's okay. But that's all that was mocked up after the fact. This was something new that Carpenter had written. And then
because they needed bridge moments, which and it's like so you have A and you have D in your movie. Well, where's C and B?
Right.
How are you connecting that? Mm-hmm. How are you doing it? So when he sees that, it's just guys arguing. I don't have the effects in yet, but even without the effects, it's just guys arguing. Mm-hmm. I need these moments that link them, that help. And then also he needed to explain the creature better. So Bennings' death does two things.
It actually does more than that too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It gets you out of the slasher film, but it also gives them a way to describe the creature.
Right. And the other things is it also at one point, you have the kennel scene, and then you don't have Norris, attacking Copper later on. So there's a long time in between monsters, as they put it in the blog.
Yeah.
So it demonstrates, one, you get some monster action, but also shows a human being in the process of being assimilated. Instead of when the others show themselves, they've already been assimilated and attack. So this shows how it could have happened, where it's like he's wrapped in tentacles and it's absorbing him. So that it serves so many purposes having that scene, because it bridges so many gaps.
And him having that time, being able to look at the movie and just write. He didn't. That scene was kind of big, but there's a few other scenes he writes. It's just a little bit, but it gives you so much.
Right. There's so many little things in there. And when it comes to Fuchs' death, Joel Polis, he was very grateful for that because it gave him more screen time and more things to do, which he'll describe.
Do you want to have more lines? Yes, please.
Yeah. It also added some mystery. Because he was impaled by a shovel, or in the original script it was an axe. It's like, well, that again, it's too slasher movie, and this is not a slasher movie. So they have him lured outside, and he's mysteriously burned. And it creates more mystery, more wonder. And again, it's one of those major talking points for decades after the fact. What happened to him? Mm-hmm. And I have
in part two. Yeah, we're going to get into all that in part two, which is where we describe theories, the hypotheses, and also I'm going to talk a bit about John Carpenter's writing style and
how he tells the story. Yeah. And there are many other little things. We won't have to go into too much detail right now, but go with his blog, and he will really go into detail about a number of other different things. The tape recorder thing, the I know I'm human speech, and so many more.
That they were put in at this point for a reason.
All of these little scenes were written by John Carpenter himself. And that there is what really makes, again, this movie so good, is that he was able to scrutinize what he had and realize this isn't working, and not only made some cuts, but also added some things. So you always say the bridge. Mm-hmm. It gets from here to here, and this goes in the middle, and boom, it makes more sense. It helps the audience understand what's going on more. It makes more sense as far as exposition is what the creature does.
Well, even look at like MacReady's tape recorder scene. That was written at that time.
Yes.
And it's only probably a handful of lines. It's only a few moments. It's like his soliloquy that you might see in a play, mm-hmm. but without it, you would lose so much. It's that just that little bit that he wrote, you get an idea of how much time passed, how people are feeling, what they're thinking, what's going on, all of it. And you also get more insight into MacReady as a character.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And don't forget to comment and keep that discussion going that's been going on for over 40 years.
All right, now we come to the final leg of this particular episode, and we're going to discuss Rob Bottin's special effects. Not enough can be said about these effects. Legendary, revolutionary, groundbreaking, Blaking.
Because you were just talking about Blake.
Yeah, Captain Blake. Bottin played Captain Blake in the movie The Fog. I do believe he had some hand in some of the makeups or the special effects. I'm not 100% sure on that. But with that, just a little bit of experience, John Carpenter hired him for this movie. Now, everybody says they're great. Everybody knows how good they are. But we're going to go into a bit more detail.
A bit more.
He was in his early 20s, and this had to have been like a kid in a candy store kind of thing with a fistful of $100 bills, because he was given a budget bigger than he'd ever worked with before, and pretty much given carte blanche. When they started the idea for this movie, the creature was going to be like a singular being, like it was going to have just one form,
like how we discussed the novella talks about. It has its set form and then just assumes other people or other creatures.
And then it was his idea to go to John Carpenter and say, look, if this creature can be anything, let's make it anything. And he literally was thinking about, well, this creature is thousands of years old. Who knows how many planets it's been to? Who knows how many creatures it has assimilated already? So let's do that. Let's go nuts and literally just make it anything. So that's why when you see the effects, it's always different. It's never the same thing twice.
Well, and if you take the movie as canon, it was out in the universe. It crashes on Earth. It's never been exposed. This is the first experience it's had with human or any kind of Earth or terrestrial life. Mm-hmm. So when you're saying it's anything, it's not something, you don't need to use earthbound creatures as a reference either. I mean, imagination, go ahead, run wild.
Exactly. And that's why you see all these kinds of different, tentacles, and a lot of people say spider legs, but they could be anything. They could any type of arthropod, which has
look like king crab legs.
Anything with the segmented legs, insect spiders or king crabs. It's so different than any other creature that has come before or even since. And even John Carpenter saying that the 1979 movie Alien, it's a great film, but it's still just a guy in a suit. And Carpenter didn't want that. He wanted something different, and did Bottin deliver. I get stuck on that because so many people call him Bottin, and it just drives me crazy. And we want to highlight one specific effect, so to speak. It's the Norris thing, and everybody who's seen it knows that the head comes off and ends up on the floor. Yeah, it ends up on the floor, and it uses its kind of like a chameleon type tongue goes and then pulls itself over.
A little whip.
But you watch that particular scene there. So pause it, slow it down, and you'll see how much is packed into that one effect. You see Norris's head, and you'll look at it. Look closely. You'll see the eyes are moving. The eyelids are moving.
I think maybe even the eyebrows might even. Possibly. Or either that or it's connected similar to. So the eyelid is.
You see the jaw moving. You see the lips moving. You see there's the one tongue that reached out and grabbed it and was pulling, but there's the other human tongue inside moving around. All of that into just this tiny effect, but it's also only on screen for a few seconds. But that's the amazing part about this. All of this detail in 1982 technology, which couldn't have been easy to put all of that stuff in one thing, and that's just one thing. And he puts that
one
level,
effect.
Right? That's just the detail he puts into everything, and that's why, again, the special effects are so good because of the level of detail involved. And I've said before, you can't say enough about them. And that was one of the main things that really made me fall into love with this movie is the effects, because it was just so intense and real, because it's all practical. It's all right there on camera.
Yeah, he put in a lot of work. So with Norris, the guy who played Norris, Charles Hallahan, they took pictures of his chest so he could match his chest hair. Mm-hmm. And any, if he had freckles or whatever, and hand inserting each hair to make sure who's noticing that,
right?
But that's the level of accuracy that he was going for, and it's seconds that it's on screen, but he made sure it worked,
right? And
even the mask that they made. If you ever hear how hard it is to have that mask made of your face. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They put straws in your nose and everything's covered.
Oh yeah, they cover you with muck and all that, yeah.
And he was cool with it. So they were able to get that really perfect.
Yeah, multiple molds. I mean, he said multiple molds in different facial expressions and things like that. I mean, imagine to sit there and hold your facial expression
yeah, or in pain or whatever.
For it's probably not hours, but a long, long time.
And then he said, people kept going, "You're right in there, Charlie." And he's like, "Just leave me alone."
Just leave me alone.
The other detail was there's one of or several of the dogs in the kennel scene are fake. And the fur he gets so well. And
right, when the dog thing is brought in and it lays down and takes that.
Well, that's Jed. That's the dog Jed. Right. He was creepy. That dog stayed there that.
So see him sitting there, and then it cuts away. You look at the other dogs that are, sleeping and looking, and they're not really all that bothered just yet. And then it cuts back to Jed. That's, it's not real. It's not a real dog. You can see how unnaturally still it is. And that's, again, the beauty and the detail involved in this is that you didn't know until somebody tells you at that point, that's a fake dog.
Yeah, because although give Jed his due, they said he was creepy because he could stay still and just stare. But there is a point where it does become a fake one, and he got the hair well. If you have looked at other movies where there's creatures that have hair, you've had to sew fun fur, if you've had any kind of Halloween costume, it has, if that fur goes in the wrong direction, it's being fake.
Yeah.
He got that fur really well, and he made it looked like it was, I always thought, oh, that's a taxidermy. No, it's not. That's an effect.
Yeah.
That's how good and exact he was. And it's one of the reasons that he worked very hard and worked himself into a bit of exhaustion.
Right. And it's a well-known thing that he ended up in the hospital after the fact, checked himself in due to exhaustion. There are some reports that he had, ulcers or pneumonia. I can't remember what he said in the documentary Terror Takes Shape.
Definitely dehydrated, I think.
Yeah, he was. I want to say pneumonia, but I don't remember, because some people say the bleeding ulcer. In my actual research, other than people mentioning that in certain YouTube videos,
nobody really says specific.
Nobody says anything specific about an ulcer. I don't remember ever Bottin.
I think he just said exhaustion.
Right.
It was just, extreme
and maybe
exhaustion.
pneumonia. I could have swore he said that too, but I'm not sure.
And anybody, because we hear about with your ADHD, we're learning about your neurodivergence and stuff, how people can get hyper-focused. Even neurotypical. Everybody gets that mode. You've had that one time where you're hyper-focused. And you're just, I'm getting this done. I'm doing it right. I don't care how many hours I sit here. Even though there's water or food right next to you, forget. Because you're just so focused. And that's and the fact that he could do whatever he wanted and he didn't have somebody hovering over his shoulder.
He had a crew of 35 to help out. But I'm sure he was doing quite a bit on his own.
Plus,
he wasn't just sitting there supervising.
Then this is one little bit we want to add in, because again, there is some confusion about how and when this happened. The kennel scene is one of the earliest effect shots that they did do.
Right.
And a lot of people think that Rob Bottin got ill, got checked in the hospital, and then Stan Winston took over.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've heard that erroneously reported a number of times in these videos.
Yeah, that's not what happened. Is Rob Bottin wasn't? I guess he had a lot. That kennel scene has a lot. There's a lot
going on in there, yeah.
There's multiple animals. The transformation has multiple stages. There was a lot. He himself went, you guys need this on a certain day. I'm behind. So he contacted Stan Winston and asked Stan, can you do just this one effect for me?
Right.
And Mr. Bottin, he had the drawing. It was his concept.
Right.
This is what we're hearing. And so he gives it to Stan Winston. His group puts that together, and then it all integrates together because it was Rob's idea.
Right.
It's just that they completed it. I find it ironic and a bit funny. Every time people go, oh, Rob Bottin's effects are amazing, they show that. Yes. They show that dog, which is the one thing he didn't do.
Right.
The effects are amazing. Look what Rob Bottin did. That's Stan Winston.
And I contacted, first on the commentary of the movie on the Shot Factory Blu-ray, Dean Cundy's commentary mentions talking about that, especially because Bottin was very sensitive about the effects and he didn't want it to be too bright. But the part that
Can you just put it in the dark? No.
Just close the door and then it'll be fine. The part that Stan Winston did, he didn't do the whole kennel scene, which is something I wanted to clarify because I wasn't sure how much was Bottin, how much was Winston. And so Dean Cundy mentions that the part where you see the guys first come in, right? The guys first come in and they all shine their lights on, and you see it turn up and look at them and start yelling at them. And all of the hair is gone, the tentacles, and even the spider legs are gone. That part there, that is Stan Winston's team. Before that, when you see the creature, its face split open, the legs come out, the tentacles come out, and then you can see it's writhing around, and you still have all the fur on it. That is Bottin. Then it goes to Stan Winston's puppet, and yeah, it is in fact a hand puppet. That's why it has that really interesting, almost organic and natural movement, because it wasn't mechanical.
There's several hand puppets in the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That part there, that was Stan Winston's team, and then you see the big hands come out the back and go and grab and pull it up. Then you cut to the scene where
catch a little bit of Rob Bottin's head, like
you see it. It's here chittering as it gets pulled up. That's Bottin, and it's up in the ceiling, and the thing opens up, and then you get Rob Bottin. He's literally behind there, and Carpenter mentions this in his commentary. You can actually see a glimpse of Bottin's head from behind, and he's in there with his hands, and he goes, "Hadouken," with the pissed off cabbage, as they call it.
Yeah, it's
the
like dog tongue and teeth. Yeah.
That's Bottin. So it's very interesting because it does seem like it's just a small segment, but it was enough to give Bottin a breather so he could continue working on not only that effect, but all of the other things he had throughout the rest of the movie.
And if you see that hairless dog, there's what some of that KY jelly comes into effect, and they use what was this stuff they squirted on the dogs, or something that's like an ingredient in hair gel?
Right, or allegedly it's also used in making Twinkies, the cream filling in the Twinkies. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, everything was safe. I remember in the commentaries they say ASPCA was there. Right. Everything was very safe. Everything was okay.
This movie was made before where they had that thing at the end of the credits where all animal action was observed by the APCA and no animals were harmed. That wasn't seemingly a necessity at the time to put it in the credits, but they were there to make sure all the animals were okay.
Mm-hmm. And the barking was done at a different time. That was...
Yes.
The barking, the freak out was one of the... Somebody recorded it at their house.
One of the sound guys, I can't remember his name, he gathers up all the neighborhood dogs, puts them in his living room, and then he literally puts on like a trench coat and a hat, and he starts going around jiggling the door handles, knocking on the windows, and all of these dogs get whipped up into a frenzy, and that's what you hear in the film.
And then he gave them a buttload of treats afterwards.
They got plenty of treats after the fact, after being kind of scared witless, but yeah, like I say, some creativity there in getting... a certain sound for that scene. Mm. And so kudos to Stan Winston. He did not take official credit for that. He has a special thanks at the end because he didn't want to steal any of Bottin's thunder. And, it's a testament to his character and his skill.
And that we will get into it more in, I believe, episode 3 of our series here about... There was some... was it like the effects guilds or something, actually?
Oh, yes.
Had some choice words to say for all of this.
Yes, the studio got in a little bit of a trouble for that from some of the guilds, so we'll get into that later. All right, that's all we have for this episode. We really do thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And we really do appreciate your time in watching this. And next episode, episode 2, is coming out in July 25th. We're going to discuss the popular fan theories about the film, what you can glean from the movie itself, and as well as what the filmmakers actually intended. And we're really excited about that, so please stay tuned to watch that. We will also have more from Stuart Cohen, Joel Polis, Thomas Waits, and Norbert Weisser. And so stay tuned for more information from the people who actually made the movie.
And I'm also going to give you that timeline that I said I wrote down, so you can understand kind of what scene is what day that they're going through. And then we will be discussing John Carpenter's writing style, that he kind of has a formula for some of his movies that he follows, and why he leaves some things blank and why he gives you some answers and whatnot. It'll be part fact and part opinion, but we've got that information coming up for you in episode 2, so stay tuned. In this very last bit, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you were here. Let me know you listened to all of it. I know there's some of you out there. You put this on, and then you went to the bathroom, and then you did dishes, and then you were making dinner, and you were just listening to the whole thing. I know you got this far. I know it. And I thank you, because you're awesome.
I'm sorry. Sensitive about that, too. I've been very upset lately.